Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, who is also the Executive Director of the Institute for Peace and Prosperity, and our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. I have a couple problems I'm going to have you help me solve today, and that is sort out who's going to be the Democratic nominee, whether Hillary's going to survive the emails, because a big event happened just yesterday. The Justice Department, in their wheeling and dealing efforts, sometimes they do good, sometimes they don't do so much good, and they have granted immunity. The whole principle of immunity sort of makes me nervous because of all the things that can be as a consequence. Anyway, that's the way the system works. So immunity was given to the individual, Pagliocci, who was the individual who set up Hillary's email in her house, the private email. And so that raised this question: why did she do it? What was the real purpose? And what is the goal? And it's been discovered. We've known it now, I think, for almost a year. And it's a big political issue. It's a legal issue. But because it's a legal issue, it's also a bigger political issue. And a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to this. But it's been very tempting by many, including myself, to think of this in terms of Petraeus, because he was a great war hero. He took orders as he was instructed to, participated in an illegal, unconstitutional war, and he was the great general, and he's loved by all the warriors. And he knows all about counterinsurgencies and surges that have no effect. But anyway, he had a similar problem of information that was supposed to be secret, and a close friend of his ended up getting some of this. So then the big question that we're going to ask today in this little visit is, does this look like it might be the end for Hillary? Or, the Clintons have been able to escape a lot, the two of them, especially Bill. Or is this the end? If you looked at it as pure justice and legalese, it might be easy. But there were times when people thought it's the end of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton a long time ago. So that's really the big question on what's likely to happen here.
Well, it's a huge issue, and there are similarities with the Petraeus episode in that it was an issue of intent. Petraeus, as we know, was the circumstances around his disclosure are more sensational, and his intent was clear. But Hillary, at the same time, had a clear intent. She wanted to set up a server, regardless of what she said. She said it was for convenience sake. She wanted a server in her house. But the intent of Hillary to have her own server was to avoid certain documents becoming government documents and then susceptible to being FOIA'd, the Freedom of Information Act. We know from the emails that were released, she got a lot of advice for people who weren't in government. Sid Blumenthal is one. Constant emails. This would have been part of the government's record and would have been subject to being hit with the Freedom of Information Act requests and other things. So she, for the interest of keeping things secret from the government, she actually allowed a lot of very, very highly classified documents to be possibly intercepted by foreign powers, by hackers, what have you. So there clearly was an intent to go around the rules on both.
But in a precise sense of her delivering information to a person, I don't think they have the evidence of that. I think what you described is pretty accurate, but she didn't hand over, and that's a difference where Petraeus literally handed over some documents to an individual. But, ironically, we talk a lot about privacy, and I complain that the government is too secret, that we should know more, and our privacy should be protected and not abused by our government. But this is another example of, there's might have been interdepartmental and administration bickering going on. She didn't want them to see everything, but there was the future that she was looking at. But then again, keeping it out of the public record is excluding the American people. Mm-hmm. What she was doing was to be secret, then she could write her memoirs as she decided they would be. And yet, once again, I think this is designed. So that to me is that's probably not that motivation probably doesn't have much legal ramifications to it, but it's also something pretty annoying about these people who think they're immune to following the laws.
Well, this is an enormous political problem for President Obama and his administration, because on the one hand, there certainly must be a lot of pressure, because with the stroke of a pen, he could literally let her off the hook. There must be a lot of pressure not to destroy the presumptive front runner and next Democratic candidate for president. But on the other hand, there is the issue of the Justice Department not seeming too overtly political, and there's the idea of selective prosecution. People like Petraeus, who got off relatively easy, and if Hillary gets off, there's this perception that people, and it's probably reality, that people that are extremely well connected and very high up can avoid prosecution, where people lower down on the ladder who do something even remotely like this are sent away to prison forever. So the question is, how will the Obama administration handle this?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think her fate is in the hands of the political system, not the legal system, because Petraeus, he was charged with 3 serious crimes, and yet he got a misdemeanor. He confessed to a misdemeanor and didn't go to prison, paid a fine, and a little bit probation. So, but I think it will be, a political thing. I think if Obama wants to go after her, he'll be able to. And behind the scenes, I don't think any of this stuff happens by accident. And if not, they're going to probably close this down pretty soon, or go through with it, or dismiss it, or have an agreement. They did it with Petraeus, but I think you're suggesting that it might not be so easy to have an agreement. Petraeus was a big name, but not quite as big as Hillary. So if they give her an excuse, but even a slap on the wrist could be very damaging to her. I think that politically would be just as damaging, and it might even be more, because it would look like special treatment.
Exactly as you were saying, Petraeus' misdemeanor, in essence, destroyed his political career. Remember, they were talking about him for president and all these things. That, along with the affair, but certainly this misdemeanor destroyed his political career. So the question is, how can Hillary get away with nothing, not even a slap on the wrist, when it's obvious that something did happen that was against the law? And what does she do? What happens to her politically if she has a misdemeanor? Mm-hmm. But we had a fit of cynicism before we started the show, and you evilly pointed out that when it comes to the Democrats, they will overlook this. This is a Republican witch hunt, on Hillary. And the same thing the Republicans did with Petraeus. Oh, the liberals are just after him because he's a great warrior. So we have another political problem, which is this party politics in America.
Well, I think this stuff is real serious, but when I look at the big picture, it's minor compared to war crimes. Why do we permit our government to lie to us, lie us into war, and then, the people who continue to commit war crimes, they're just taking orders. Well, if the war is illegal, immoral, and innocent people are being killed, and we invade countries and a lot of innocent people die, that's very, very serious. But that is not the issue here. But I think George W. Bush can't go around the world because some countries would like to arrest him for war crimes. So people have thought along this way. So that to me is the big issue. But still, working this situation out for political reasons, I think, is going to be very important. I think it's interesting, and you might have an opinion by Loretta Lynch, who's the Attorney General. I wonder if she feels like she's in the middle of it, because I would guess that she would want to do everything she could to help Hillary. But if Obama didn't want to help Hillary, I wonder how those differences, the politics of it gets a little bit more confusing.
You wonder what's being said or what the text messages are. It's interesting you point out the war criminals, though, because I think a better case we made, and we'd probably both be more satisfied, that both Hillary and Petraeus should have been tried for war crimes, not for these crimes, because Hillary is every bit as guilty as Petraeus for war crimes. She's the one, she knew that she was advised that the Libya bombing and attack would be a bad move. Bob Gates wrote in his memoirs that he tried to convince Obama that this is a terrible thing. He said it was 51-49 among the White House about the staff, and Hillary jumping in on the side of bombing tipped the scales in favor of bombing. We see how that worked out. So she's got to bear some responsibility for the disaster that's Libya, just like Petraeus has to bear responsibility for the disaster that's Iraq.
One of the technical arguments that have come up is whether this material is classified and what the stamp was, and Hillary's side is arguing, well, it wasn't stamped top secret, but then it got stamped top secret later on, and that's an inviting excuse, for some people who are sympathetic and say, hey, well, maybe that's true, that's the same. But it's been pointed out by some real experts that show that once you're in the State Department, everything is considered secret just because it hasn't had some stamp. The email server shouldn't have been open, but the material, I don't think anybody can argue, well, this was within the law, and it was okay because there wasn't a proper stamp. I think it's very clear that she was doing something that she shouldn't have been doing.
Well, I spent a short period of time as a very low-level person in the State Department intelligence, and I knew that every single thing is automatically classified, at least at the confidential level, and I was a nobody. So someone like Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, there's no way that she would not have known that the presumption is every single thing, even a memo to the coffee shop, would presumably classified.
Yes. And Trump comes into this. He gets to voice his opinion, but his assessment, which is probably going to be pretty important, his immediate reaction was, well, what Hillary did was 100 times worse than what Petraeus did, and he's sort of in the camp for political reasons. I think Trump's a little bit political, and he's able to demagogue his way through this. But he knows that the conservative Republicans still love Petraeus. He's not been held up to any higher standard, and he gets away with this. But so Trump highly defended Petraeus, but of course he's thinking that he might be running against Hillary. But this all fits into a not a firm prediction, but a thesis that I have followed, that even, for months, the contrarian viewpoint, when everybody, the bull market is here forever, it's a new economy. Well, the bull market on politics for Hillary and Trump, it's all sealed, everybody knows what's going to happen. And I say, well, I wouldn't be shocked, and I've mentioned this before, I wouldn't be shocked that one or both of them will not make it. And I still think, of course, it's not much of an assumption now. She's getting closer to a problem, but it's a problem for the establishment, which we should cheer, because the Democratic establishment has Hillary to deal with. The Republican establishment has Trump to deal with. And some people say, oh, this is terrible, we're going to get gridlock in Washington. Thank you. Yeah. Because maybe this march toward bigger government and more spending, in spite of what the politicians say. But why I'm a little bit discouraged about all this grandstanding is we don't even have a candidate that's pretending they're going to cut anything. There's no saying, well, we're going to cut this, and maybe somebody will say we'll cut taxes, but what does that mean when it's just in a political campaign? And nobody's been really pushing that real hard. The one that has gotten the most attention is the one who wants to raise taxes to pay for all the socialist programs that we have.
All the free stuff, yeah. No, the issues are not being debated this year, and I think it's a function of the blind anger that can be channeled in a direction that is very negative to our liberties.
Well, I think it's a very important issue that's going on today, and what happens since immunity has been given. The timing, I think, is unpredictable. I think sometimes they think, well, this will take a week or two or three. Those predictions are generally wrong. It takes a lot longer. This is going to linger. Of course, I don't think it helps Hillary if it just lingers on. And if there's no clear-cut way for her to be exonerated clean, I would have to say that she's in big trouble, and that politically the Democrats have every bit as much of a problem dealing with finding their candidate as the Republicans seem to be on agreeing on their candidate. So I am sure that we will continue to hear about this case, about the emails, and we will continue to hear about the presidential campaign, and you'll continue to hear from us from the Liberty Report and try to keep you up to date on all the issues of the day. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.